Welcome back, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Vijay Vaitheeswaran. I'm the Global Energy and Climate Innovation Editor of The Economist. We're live from the Global Conference on AI and Energy, convened by the International Energy Agency in Paris. I'm moderating a series of conversations today with leaders from government, industry, civil society on the meaning of AI and how it will transform the global economy in the years ahead. I want to welcome Ashiss Kumar Dash, Executive Vice President of Infosys, for this conversation.
Hello, Vijay.
Welcome, Dash.
Hi. Thank you for having me here.
Now, Infosys, of course, a pioneer in IT, an Indian global standard bearer now with a lot of experience in the roots of software and technology, and now you're pushing into AI. But you're promoting what you call socially responsible AI. I'm curious to know, what do you mean by this? And what does it not include? Give us an idea of where you're going with that.
Sure. Thanks, Vijay. Thanks for having me here, first of all. And before I begin, I wanted to thank IEA for hosting us. What a wonderful 2 days of discussing and getting the industry experts from all over the world to share their views on multiple aspects of the energy ecosystem.
I leave with more questions than answers yet, but it was very productive so
far. Yes, and what a timely topic of AI for energy and energy for AI, and I just enjoyed it profoundly. Coming to the point of responsible AI, I think when we are going into this new era of AI, we need to make sure that from day one, we design things, we reimagine things, keeping in mind that we have to be responsible in everything that we do. I essentially talk about three aspects of responsible AI. So there is the process aspect of it, which is, you have to put the right governance in place on day one so that you are not going out of track in the AI world. Secondly is technical guardrails that you need to put, right, to make sure that you have checks and balances using technology and tools, and you can use AI as well in that space. And the third is legal and compliance guardrails. So my view is to take the most strict AI regulations that you have to comply by, and then apply that throughout your reimagination process so that you are right all the time. Secondly, regulations are evolving in different parts of the world, and they're at different stages of maturity. So as organizations grow and deploy and start investing into their AI use cases, it's better to have responsible AI as a guardrail, as an approach to that. We at Infosys, to give you an example, when we started thinking about creating an AI playbook, we made sure that the responsible AI concepts are part of the playbook, and we went ahead and got a certificate or a certification called ISO 42001.
Right. So we already have ISO certification in this area.
Yes.
That's impressive.
That
Even though, as you pointed out, regulations vary. Right? Europe is further ahead in some areas, as usual, with the bureaucratic approach to things. GDPR being an example on data privacy, where Europe is led. Some countries are cutting and pasting Europe. Other countries are a Wild West. So how do you have a standard, and as a corporate, and you have many Fortune 1000 companies as your clients, that operate across varied geographies with different rules? How do you persuade them, let's say, of your view that you should have a uniform and high standard rather than maybe a multiplicity of approaches where you might have higher growth in some markets because they have lower standards?
So like I said, when you're developing your guardrails, you have to start with the most conservative one that you have to operate in.
Why? Make the case. Why?
Because if you are to retrofit something that you have already done and then the regulations catch up to you, the cost is very high.
I see.
Right?
I see.
It's not just the cost, it's a disruption as well. Because once you are in the AI journey and you reimagine your processes, you reimagine who you are, in that world, if you have to retrofit and come back to an earlier phase of where you were, it's a very expensive process, and sometimes it has legal and compliance implications as well. So you don't want to deal with that.
So for some of our I'm sure millions of viewers, this will come as a pleasant surprise that you're advocating responsible AI, because there are concerns in the world about how AI may be developing, how it's using, how it might be abused. And so what kind of response do you find with your advocacy of these sort of responsibility guardrails? And what does it constrain? Maybe give an example of how it's being used by your clients or yourself.
Sure. So as Infosys, we take pride in the fact that we lead the way in many areas. Right? In my session today, I talked about we became carbon neutral 30 years ahead of the Paris Agreement and in 2020. And that didn't happen by accident. It was on the early founders and then all the leaders that came in. We made sure that even if it was cost prohibitive, we do the sustainable things in our operations, we deploy these sustainable practices and so on, right, to use the technology to be sustainable. Similar journey in the AI world as well. When we talk to clients, our assumption is that the clients would look at somebody like Infosys to be first practicing AI first in a responsible way, so that we have the right to go and implement this with our clients. And that's what I think makes the credibility go up.
But give an example. What's something a responsible client would not do with AI? Just so people understand what you're talking about.
So let's take the example of the energy sector.
Sure.
Right? If you're doing a grid planning or a grid simulation, I wouldn't put any data out there that compromises the real actual grid. Right? I would probably use simulated data. I would probably use data that mirrors something similar, but I wouldn't put the nodes and the details of the grid out there in public, because you're compromising on something very, very critical to the national security and the society in general.
Now, of course, that's the first principle. You don't want hackers to get at it or data to be abused. Privacy issues come in, but just to acknowledge there are trade-offs, right? You're making a choice.
Yes.
For example, there are those who are advocating use of that data in new ways, virtual power plants, the aggregation of a lot of EVs to time shift, and maybe even save the grid from peak load. And so folks who look at smart meters and so on complain that it's too hard to get data out of smart meters in a smart way or even in a privacy respectful way. So you may give up some innovation in order to have your responsibility. Is that fair to say?
True. I mean, yeah, it's fair to say. But then if you look at the bigger picture, right, you can create synthetic data. You can train your models based on data that is almost, almost similar. And is that going to slow you down? Maybe in the initial phase. But once the models start training and they understand the model, the data, I don't think it slows down significantly. So
okay, so you find a way to thread the needle on that.
Absolutely.
Picking up on that point about sort of demand flexibility, which is one of the hot words, we've heard from Fatih Birol, the executive director of the IEA, at this conference, talk about the need for flexibility, including from data centers themselves.
Absolutely.
We know the energy system itself is evolving rapidly with lots of renewables and intermittent power coming on. That's creating some challenges for a lot of grids. And now we have these data centers hyperscaled, even at a gigawatt scale, size of nuclear power plants and so on. Is it realistic to think that data centers in their new giant incarnation can actually be flexible and help the grid adapt or deal with that renewable intermittency? Or is that asking too much of what might be fundamentally an inflexible load, very time-sensitive load? I want my query and I want it answered right now, says almost everyone that uses ChatGPT. It's
an interesting point. If you look at some of the discussions that happened over the last 2 days, it's a two-way street in my view. You have the intermittent, unpredictable supply in some sense, right? When you move into the green energy, the wind and the solar and other things. And then you have the data center demand that's growing rapidly. Now, is it possible for the data center demand to meet somewhere in the middle where there are two aspects to it. One, when you train your models, and two, where you train your models, right? And I think there is some level of planning that can be brought into the whole data center operations, where you are going to develop your AI models based on the availability of renewable energy. It may not be 100% compliant, and it may not be 100% in the way the supplier wants, but there is a way to. So there is some flexibility when you deal with the training data, as you say, for time shifting, not when it's peak, but when it's off peak. Exactly. Or geography shifting, as it were, spatial shifting to another data center or one where there's green energy available at the moment. But that's training data. That's very important, but the lion's share of use, I think it's fair to say, will not be training data over time, right? Eventually, it'll be queries, inference. And that's harder to shift, am I right? Well, yes, it is harder to shift because you're going to have the real-time demand from the end users and your business. But at the same time, I think keeping the inferencing data or inferencing demand of energy geographically distributed can be possible. So you don't have to do it at the same location where there's a demand constraint on the supply constraint on the energy side of it. So there is some possibility of architecting it in the long run. So the old rule in real estate, location. Sounds like it could be important for AI as well. Well, we've just run out of time. Thank you for joining us. This conversation, live from the IEA's Global Conference on AI and Energy, will be available for replay on the IEA's website.
Up next, I'll be speaking with Andreas Scharrenbeck, Chief Executive Officer of Hitachi Energy. I hope you'll join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Vijay.